I'm Jonathan Smith, solution area expert for cloud products here at Net Insight. Yeah, I think fundamentally all these leagues and all these sports rights holders are still trying to achieve the same thing. So the fact is, it doesn't matter if you're a $1 billion sports league or you're a small, a small startup league just getting started. The reality is, once you've gone beyond that basic interest in the people that are playing the sport, then you've got to engage fans. And if you're a multi-billion-dollar organisation, your ability to throw budget at engaging those fans with, secondary screen and data-driven feeds, gamification, direct-to-consumer efforts is far larger because you've got a bigger fan base. But fundamentally, in order to get from very small through to the minor leagues, through to a growing national league, through into those those top 10, you've got to fundamentally do the same thing, and that's engaging your audience. And the primary way to do that with sport, of course, is to deliver video content of games and matches, or companion interests around each of those events. Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of things that come into play. Like if you're distributing events, globally, then your demographics, the target audience, although they're interested in the sport, may well want to consume that in a different way. They may well have an interest in a different area of the sport or a different viewpoint onto the sport they're looking at. And companion kind of advertising and look and feel and everything else that goes with that will have to be kind of tailored, if you like, to each one of those regions. So I guess there's geographical differences also play a part in where you are in this kind of continuum, this journey to be your $1 billion sports league. If you've moved past the point that you're, contributing to your primary audience, so let's say you're a US up-and-coming sports league and you're targeting, first of all, your local states. You may be doing some YouTube, some Twitch. You've bought a cost-effective encoder. You're doing internet delivery for that, and you're kind of starting to ramp up the production quality. Then at some point, hopefully you get to the point where there's some distribution deals get done and other platforms will want to carry your content, but primarily that will probably happen in that first location first. Let's say you do a deal with ESPN. Great, I've signed my first distribution deal. I've got a partner. Eventually, you'll kind of tend to saturate that local market with a distribution deal, and so then you're going to look to emerging markets. But of course, outside of your local area where you've made maybe your network investments, your connectivity investments, it gets quite risky to try and break into a new market. And we spoke about different markets maybe not reacting in the same way as one another, and they have different needs. So your chance of success isn't always completely obvious for every global market. So then you have to be quite careful, because let's say that you've organically grown in your local market, but now you're trying to branch out somewhere else. Like making a complete new investment in that market before that's developed, may not pay off. If you make a big capital investment and that market doesn't come to fruition, then you put yourself in a really poor position. So what we tend to see is people making use of on-demand services. If we look at our own platforms, we're looking to make sure there's a granular way of our customers, buying Nimbra Edge features and components that are done on a granular usage base. And that's because that allows you to investigate that market, it allows you to analyze your success in that market, and almost most importantly, it allows you the ability to kind of fail fast out of that endeavor if you need to, because then you're not stuck with any kind of long-term overhead and business, kind of business investment problems. So it's really important to be agile, both with your system of choices, but also with your kind of business models to support that growth. Yeah, I think it's about moving beyond like that initial point, right? And the problem, the trap you can get into is in order to expand reach, you either need to like hit new locations and new audiences, or you need to change the kind of the recipe of the thing you're distributing, or add it on. Like if you look at the way that's done well with the best engagement sports rights in the world, you not only see your primary production feed, you've got player cams, you've got kind of gamification modes, you've got data-driven feeds, because all of your fan base is going to want to consume that information in a different way. And certainly, age demographics play a huge role in that. We're seeing, dare I say it, my generation will probably be happy consuming sports from the primary production feed. But then, as we start to look at, the younger viewerships, they're often really drawn by being able to create their own kind of glimpse into whatever the action is. So they'll often use or like to use things like player cam or second screens to have data information alongside the main event they're watching. And I think in order to do that, you have to plan to be extensible in your platform investments early on. So once you've moved beyond simple internet delivery, and you know that you're on this growth trajectory, then try and avoid getting yourself boxed into a kind of a corner. Like, don't go and invest in just a low cost kind of encode decode solution just to get the job done. Think about how you're going to orchestrate these solutions as those number of streams goes up and up in the future. And for that, you need to make an investment in kind of a platform. You need to buy into a platform that allows you to attach more and more streams and to orchestrate them centrally. You have to be able to manage that expansion. Otherwise, you're going to be reinvesting every 18 months because you've moved beyond the capabilities of that initial choice. And I think that's a poor way to make your money go a little bit further through this growth journey. Again, it depends where you are on this journey. So at the beginning of the journey, the crucial thing is to keep eyeballs on your content, is to deliver it like a quality. And there's nothing that switches, production quality or some nuances about, the look and feel of your production won't have as much bearing as if you've got, the buffering bar of doom, or if you've got dropouts and lost packets and the viewer experience is diminished. They'll switch off. And so when you start this journey, it's all about finding the blend between investment and reliability to that consumer. So giving yourself the ability to use a platform that can overlay, reliability architecture into this picture is quite important. So having something that really can be a robust solution really helps engagement at that early journey. But then as you move forward, I think it's important that you might like to explore things like value-added services. Do I need to manipulate my content for multiple different outputs? Are there multiple variants? Do I want to do some transcoding, some graphic overlays? Do I need to do frame rate conversion to be able to deliver to a different partner in a different region? And again, for that, you need to make sure you're within a platform that supports some of these features as you move forward. And then when you get to a kind of scale, then you need a platform that is extensible enough to grow from a few streams up into thousands of streams. If you think about the largest sports holders in the world and think about the number of inputs that happen across events from the stadium, there can be hundreds of inputs coming into a production center, and there can be thousands of distribution endpoints. Well, the cross product of all of that is a network that has to be really robust and scalable and reliable. So again, you need to be watching out that you don't end up in a kind of a corner and you can't expand from where you are, because the only way out of that is reinvestment. You want something that's going to scale with your growth. Yeah, so there's kind of if you think about, like, if we take IP delivery and IP contribution, IP distribution, then there's been quite a journey from very traditional broadcast approaches where we had dedicated fiber networks, dedicated hardware, and that still absolutely might be the right answer for very large scale, very high quality productions. But what we've seen is, because of the number of streams both being contributed and distributed, we need to get a lot closer to the kind of from event to consumer. Like, that bit in the middle that's traditional broadcast has to be far more efficient. And so at the moment, what was kind of getting done was there's the market brought, let's say, the basics you need, an encoder, and an encoder that can be a venue encoder. So you invest in some encoders, you throw them onto the floor at the venue, and you can do your sports event. That's great. You're now using internet connectivity, using IP transport, and you bring that maybe into your traditional broadcast environment and distribute it, or you're going direct to an IP platform. And what we're seeing happen now, though, is the number of those devices is growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And so you have to manage them, and you have to know, is my device configured appropriately? How do I get to that device to reconfigure it if I need to? And this is where we look at the problem and say, no, that overarching management of all these components is critical, because otherwise you're just stuck in, and what tends to happen is your operational costs start to increase. So what you thought you saved in like a budget approach to getting started then bites you with kind of operational overhead later. So, and I think we're at a tipping point at the moment where we've gone on this journey. We've started using this cost-effective contribution and distribution approach, but we're now at a tipping point where we have to be able to do that kind of at broadcast grade and think about some of the operational overhead that comes along with it. Yeah, so productions traditionally, again, we'll talk about kind of what you can do today and what's been done traditionally. But a traditional production, and let's say remote production, right? So once we stopped producing everything at the venue because we wanted to centralize our resources, that was the first kind of step in the efficiency ladder. Then what happens when you move yourself remote to the venue is the kind of latency has to increase because the signal has to be delivered across a network and across a distance. But in traditional productions, you're trying to coordinate interviews, you're trying to coordinate studio pieces and local events pieces, and so the latency becomes very important to make that fluid and to flow well, to make sure conversations that don't have kind of pauses in them and things like that. And if you ever watched an old satellite contribution for a news piece, you've got people waiting for 10 seconds for the for a reply. You can't make a good production with that. So we were very focused on latency and quality. And if you want low latency, if you want good quality, then you're going to have high bandwidth use. And so high bandwidth and edge connectivity for internet connectivity generally don't marry themselves that well together. The core connectivity for the internet is really quite vast, but at the edge you're always relying on some kind of commodity bit of connectivity. And so there, if you're doing that very low latency, very high end, you're probably going to make an investment in some kind of dedicated connectivity at the edge of your network. And so in that case, you end up with a hybrid solution where you're using maybe a locally connected network for your production, and then you're moving out of that environment into your IP distribution cloud domain, for instance. So this is kind of, again, it's both a reflection on quality and production values, and so you could say that approach is attributed to the higher end of this continuum we're talking about, the big sports businesses. And what we're seeing lower down that hierarchy, if you like, is people trying to get closer to encoding at the format they're expecting to deliver. So if I can make some, let's say, some compromises in my production values, and I can tolerate higher latency, and I can tolerate good quality at a lower bandwidth that maybe makes it more difficult for me to heavily manipulate my content, then I can save money on bandwidth. Then I can use edge connectivity to deliver direct from venue into my distribution, into my remote production. And so we're seeing more and more kind of rights holders, leagues, broadcasters, production companies starting to make compromises with their approach in order to get it more efficient. And you can do that on kind of a stream by stream basis. So you might take your primary feeds in and do a traditional high quality, low latency, but then you might bring your secondary streams, you might deal with your social media consumer distribution in a different way to get that more efficient and more cost effective.